Hello and welcome to Silver Age, Silver Screen, a podcast where we watch, discuss, and review sci-fi, cult, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky films. I'm your co-host, Casey Charms.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
Yeah, and a few months back, we reviewed the original Superman movie from the 70s, and we gave it pretty good scores. For a while, it was our top-rated movie. And maybe we were a bit gentle on it. I gave it a 9. Looking back, I'd probably give it like an 8.5. And you may be wondering, why am I bringing this up? Because I'm going to be real, dog. I'm not going to be gentle in this episode. Like, normally my thing is I'm the guy who tries to like these movies. I don't like this movie.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because I'm actually on the flip side of that. I'm typically the one that's like taking the piss out of it more than you. And honestly, I have my own thoughts and I'm going to be subjective with my thoughts and tell you how I feel and what I think. Not a big fan of this movie, just right out the gate. Sorry if that offends you. I'd still recommend you watch this video because it's good to hear other people's opinions, and we'd appreciate the views and the likes. But
also,
I don't know.
Not a video, and there aren't likes. This isn't YouTube; it's a podcast.
Well, one can dream, Casey. I don't know. Part of me feels like I want to be a little bit more respectful for this one. On the flip side, so today, Casey and I are gonna have our roles switched in a way.
Yeah. We haven't said yet. We're doing Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder, starring Henry Cavill and Amy Adams. It's a film based on Superman, and I really like Superman. There's a reason we're doing this, besides for the fact that it's in our wheelhouse of things to do. In case you haven't heard, Zack Snyder's directing another Superman movie, or a Justice League movie. Like, he directed 2 bad Superman movies, then half directed a bad Justice League movie, and then they gave him $70 million to go back and fix his bad Justice League movie.
And make it 4.5 hours.
We'll talk about that on a later date.
Yeah.
When we eventually get to it.
Our original plan was we were going to review Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, then the Snyder Cut. But the problem with that is that plan was made when the Snyder Cut was planned to come out in November. Now it's coming out in March, and by the time this episode rolls around is when the Snyder Cut will be released, so we'll get to review the Snyder Cut eventually, but for right now we're just reviewing this film in honor of the Snyder Cut coming out.
Yeah. Snyder Cut's not going to be good.
Yeah, I'm
just saying that. That's my called shot. This episode was delayed a few days because of scheduling conflicts, so we actually got to see the latest trailer of it, the one that ends with "We live in a society." It's not going to be good.
Yeah, no. I don't know. I mean, if I'm being totally honest with you, like, I agree with you. I'm not holding out hope that the movie is going to be that great either. I'm not the biggest fan of Zack Snyder. I think, personally, his best movies are mediocre at best. But at the same time, as a fellow artist and filmmaker, I appreciate the fact that he has his own style and he sticks to that to do what he wants to do. He's true to himself. And he has a very devoted cult following. Personally, I'm not a part of that cult following. I think his movies range from, like I said, mediocre to shit. But, I don't know. After he was arguably unfairly screwed over by the studio with the theatrically released Justice League film, I'm very glad that he's getting the opportunity to tell his story and make the movie that he was going to make. And I'm glad that all the actors are supporting him and campaigning for this to be released, and I'm very happy that Warner Brothers is allowing him to make his cut of Justice League and release it out to the world. That said, it's going to be a 4.5 hour Zack Snyder movie, and it's probably not going to be good.
Oh god, no. I'm not glad. Like, you could have taken that $70 million, $70 million, and given it to a competent director who doesn't actively detest the characters that you're working with. But whatever. Let's talk about this movie. We're not talking about the movie that came out 8 years after this one. Let's talk about Man of Steel.
The film opens up on Krypton. Kal-El, the young Superman, is born to Jor-El, who is warning the planet's leaders that after they decided to bore into the planet and harness the planet's core, they have essentially set the planet to explode and die. Then General Zod, played by Michael Shannon, breaks in, kills the leaders, imprisons them, and forces Jor-El to either side with him or be imprisoned. But Jor-El decides, no, I'm not going to subject the planet to your fascist regime. He breaks out of imprisonment, flies to the birthing pods.
Yeah, he doesn't just fly to them. It's so weird. He, jumps on this sky dragon thing. Side note, the stuff on Krypton is, admittedly, it looks nice. That's a common theme in this movie, where it looks nice, but it isn't well written. But anyway, Jor-El, he just, jumps into the water of the baby mines and splashes down. No security.
Yeah, basically what this film sets up is Krypton is a world where there are no natural births. They're all, born in a lab, in, a test tube kind of thing, where they're all synthetic people that have their DNA derived from this thing called the Codex, which is like a skull from an ancient Kryptonian that they use to siphon the DNA from and implant that into all the Kryptonians in their birth, so that when they're born, they're basically set on this one specific path in life, ooh, you're gonna be a soldier, you're gonna be a politician, and you're gonna spend your entire life training to become the best version of that possible. Which makes it a bit more out of place that Kal-El was born naturally, because he was the first natural birth in thousands of years, I believe, they said.
Yeah, the first shot of this movie is Superman's mom screaming in childbirth. That's an interesting way to start off.
Jor-El, he takes the Codex skull, flies back home, puts his son in a space pod, puts the Codex into the pod with him, but right before he's about to launch it, Zod and his crew make their way into his house. They have a little bit of a fight. Superman's mom launches the pod towards Earth, where they say he's going to be an outcast, they will try to kill him, but then Jor-El responds, how? He will be a god to them.
Yeah.
It's very true to the origins of Superman, the idea that Krypton's blowing up. In order to save him, his father shoots his son off to a new world where the yellow sun and the atmosphere will feed him and give him powers beyond imagination, beyond belief. So yeah, that's very true to the origin.
But what's not true is they're adding in the stuff with the Jor-El giving him the make a bunch of Kryptonians Codex monkey skull thing.
Yes.
So it's not just saving Superman. He's the last survivor of his people. They're adding in this stuff. And we'll discuss it more when it's more in depth, but I don't know. While we're talking about this opening, like I said, it looks amazing. I'd also like to give a praise to Ayelet Zurer, who plays Superman's mom. She does a really good job.
Yes.
With her, he'll be all alone. I don't want to send him. She does a really good job. Russell Crowe plays Jor-El, and he's very good in the role. I would arguably say better than Marlon Brando, but that's a hot take.
Yeah.
But you know who's not great in this little prologue?
Who's that?
Zod's weird.
Yeah.
He has the worst haircut.
Right.
And Michael Shannon, I like Michael Shannon as an actor. He's great in Knives Out, but all of his line delivery in this movie, it sounds like he's gargling rocks. He talks weird.
Yeah, it's very static. Very monotone.
Yeah, and we'll get more to Zod as it goes on. I really don't like this portrayal of Zod. I don't even like Zod that much as a character, but at least Terrence Stamp from Superman 2 had this presence, this intimidation. Michael Shannon doesn't.
Well, that's also my thing upon watching this, and this isn't really a flaw of this movie. This is just more so Superman movies as a whole. Superman has a very interesting rogues gallery with a lot of really compelling villains, but you wouldn't know that if all you knew was the movies, because as far as you'd be concerned, all he has is Lex Luthor and General Zod. You look at every single Superman movie, it's Lex Luthor, General Zod, Lex Luthor again, Lex Luthor for another time. than General Zod.
Then Lex Luthor. But Doomsday's in this one, kind of. But also Doomsday is Zod.
This kind of gets back to what I said in the Justice League New Frontier movie. It's like, you understand Brainiac is a character, right? Like, I love Brainiac. I think he's probably my favorite Superman villain. He was in the Injustice 2 video game. He was in a bunch of the animated series. There's just more to Superman's rogues gallery than just Lex Luthor and General Zod. Yes, I understand Lex Luthor is the most important part of it, arguably, because he's his main antagonist, but I don't know, there's more you can do, and I completely agree. Michael Shannon, it's either the choices he made or the way he was directed, it just doesn't work. He's not the intimidating presence that General Zod or a villain in this position would be.
Yeah, and here's my thing, and it's a very common thread in this movie that I'm going to come back to, and to be honest, it was my big problem with Superman the movie back in the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about Krypton. I really don't. What I think works best for Superman is works that focus on Krypton the least. I don't like Superman as this Christ metaphor, this powerful dude sent to Earth to save it by powerful aliens. I like him as being this ordinary guy who grew up on Earth, raised by regular people, who discovers that he possesses incredible power. I like the human side of Superman. I think the man is more important than the super. Yeah, Krypton looks nice in this movie, but I don't care about Krypton.
Right, and to an extent, this film does explore who he is as a person, but in many ways, it's more so explores who he is as a human being in relation to his godlike powers.
I guess.
And then in Batman vs. Superman, and most likely in Zack Snyder's Justice League, they go very, very heavy into the Jesus metaphors, this man is a god, and he's an angel sent from heaven and stuff like that, and it's a bit of a forced message, and I think that one of the many criticisms people have of Zack Snyder is the idea that at the end of the day, he just doesn't really have a good understanding of the characters he is portraying in his films. It's like, explore who Superman is as a human being. Yeah, with crazy powers, but the most interesting part is when he's human. But in this one, it's like, no, he's a Christ figure, and they spend so much time focusing on that. And then the sequel, it's like, oh yeah, Batman, I don't know, let's just have him kill people. Literally, like, shoot their car until it explodes, and then drive over it. But then in an interview, he says, no, I don't see it as him killing people. I see it as, like, things happen, and he doesn't step in to, like, save people's lives. So it's not, like, really his fault. Like, shut up.
And this prologue with Zod that introduces really quickly a bunch of complicated plot stuff, probably too complicated for the film's own good. It ends with Jor-El's killed, Superman is, well, Kal-El, he's not Superman yet. Kal-El is launched to Earth, then the cops come by and they arrest Zod because his coup fucking failed, because he's an idiot. You suck at doing a coup, Zod, and he is sent to the Phantom Zone to live his eternity in suffering. And I gotta say, did you think the same thing I thought when you saw Zod's ship, that they sent him to the Phantom Zone? Like his prison pod thing?
Yeah, basically what they do.
It's a dick.
Yeah.
They put Zod and his minions in a bunch of dicks.
Yeah, they freeze them.
In a penis.
And then, like, put them in this very phallic-shaped pod.
It's so phallic.
Shoot them up into the air, into another ship. Then that goes through a portal to the Phantom Zone. And it's just so complicated. Like, in the original one from the 70s, they just shot him with a ray gun, and that turned him into, like, a prism where they were basically trapped in a different dimension, hurtling through space for an eternity. But yeah, in this one, it's like they get frozen, then they get put into a pod, then that gets put into a ship, then that gets put through a portal, and it's just so... It's something so small.
It's a rushing nesting doll of prisons, and when you open it, you find I can't get past it. Oh god, did no one...
At the end of the day, this is more so a nitpick, but it's still a really funny thought to be like, yeah, putting Zod inside a penis.
Well, that's why he's such a dick later in the movie.
Of course. Naturally, I mean, it rubbed off on him.
Yeah, god. So, Kal-El's ship... Oh, by the way, we forgot to mention, you can see baby Superman's penis in the first scene. And, if I had a nickel for every time I saw baby Superman's penis in a movie, I would have 2 nickels, which, I mean, it's not a lot, but it's weird that they did it twice.
Hashtag Phineas and Ferb.
Baby Superman, he crash lands in Kansas, where he is found by a couple, Jonathan and Martha Kent, Superman's real parents.
But before we even see that, we see Krypton blowing up, everyone dies.
Oh, right.
And as soon as the ship crashes onto Kansas, it immediately cuts to, 30 years into the future? 33 years into the future?
Right. I was going chronological, but this movie jumps around a lot, and I don't really know if it needed to jump around a lot. It doesn't really add much.
No.
Do you want to do in order that things happen or in chronological?
I kind of want to go with the way the events unfold in the film because it kind of has something to do with an argument I'm going to make later on.
Gotcha. We cut to Clark Kent as a grown man. He's doing some deadliest Kent shit.
Yeah. It's like, I get, in the original one from the 70s, and we're going to draw a lot of comparisons to it. I don't typically like doing that. I try to be as objective to the film as possible.
I mean, if Zack Snyder is going to borrow the things that I didn't like about the 70s one and put them in his movie, even though those things aren't in the comics, like the Christ parallels, I'm gonna compare.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. But, he's on a crab fishing boat when they get a distress call that an oil rig nearby caught fire, and there's a bunch of people trapped on there. And then out of nowhere, Clark Kent, an adult Clark Kent, leaves the ship without anyone realizing what happened to him. The next time we see him, he has his shirt off because Henry Cavill is fucking cut in this movie. I'm straight, but it's a good looking man, So he has his shirt off for some reason. He climbs up the oil rig, is able to rescue a bunch of the people while on fire, and he saves everyone else on the oil rig. But in doing so, he himself is in the rig as it collapses into the ocean.
And we should mention, because it's one of the few things I liked in this movie, him saving the people on the oil rig is him holding up the entire rig as it's collapsing. And, I mean, metal bends, that wouldn't work, but it's really cool, and it's one of the few times in this movie that it gets Superman right. I like Superman saving people. See previous stuff we've talked about Superman in.
So while he's just apparently unconscious and floating in the water, he flashes back to when he was a child in school, and his powers start manifesting. He starts hearing everything. He starts seeing through people because he has X-ray vision, super hearing, all that.
Side note, I really like how they visualize X-ray vision in this.
Yeah.
Because for decades now in the comics, Superman doesn't technically have X-ray vision. They call it that, but really he can see through atoms, so he can see every layer of your body at once. And they show him, just shifting between normal and muscle and bone. It's a cool effect.
As you probably picked up on right now, it's the events of this film, at least the first half of the movie, are told out of order, in a non-linear style.
Yeah, Superman keeps getting knocked out and having flashbacks of his childhood.
Right, exactly. That can work, that's fine. The non-linear style has made some of the most compelling movies ever. Pulp Fiction, Memento. They're movies that are incredibly well done, and they go with a non-linear style because telling the story in that order benefits the film as a whole. The problem is there's also a lot of people who think that by doing a non-linear style like Memento or Pulp Fiction, it's automatically going to work out, and it's automatically going to make their film better and more intelligent. But the fact of the matter is that if you're telling your story out of order, you better damn well make sure it works and serves a purpose. And in this movie, it just doesn't. Things will happen, and then it'll flash back to a pivotal moment in Superman's life, and then it'll flash back again, okay, that happened. Why? There's not a lot of room to give a shit about this. The scene where he runs out of the classroom, locks himself in the utility closet, and uses his heat vision to burn his teacher's hand so she doesn't get into the room, and all the other kids are standing around, talking about him, and his mom comes to the school and helps him focus. That would be really compelling, but it's told in a flashback, and it's just kind of this, oh yeah, that happened, because we don't get a linear progression of how this affects him as a person and how this changes his life. Like, take for example, the original Superman film. As a teenager, he's struggling with his powers, or struggling with not fitting in with other kids and not being able to because of his powers. And he tells his father, like, I really just want to do that. I want to just be a normal kid. And the dad's like, I know, it sucks, but you gotta stick through because one day it's all gonna work out. Your powers are going to do so much good for the world. And then his father, just out of nowhere, drops dead of a heart attack. And you can feel that weight because in a conversation, you saw him find a child in a spaceship. And then he grows up his childhood, and you can tell that he has such a really deep connection with him. But then he dies, and the weight of that is felt to an extent. I mean, but that instills in Superman the idea that there's things in this life that we cannot control. And the weight of his death, of Jonathan Kent's death, has an impact on Superman as a whole. But like in this movie, for example, and this is kind of cutting ahead, Jonathan Kent does die in this as well.
Oh God, I have thoughts.
But the problem with that is it's like we get like a handful of scenes with young Clark Kent and Jonathan Kent, father and adopted son, and they are talking. You can kind of tell they have a bit of a strong relationship, despite the fact that it's all exposition and really poorly written. But then out of nowhere, it like cuts to Lois Lane in a graveyard, standing over Jonathan Kent's gravestone. And now you're like, oh, wait, he's dead? And then it immediately cuts back to the flashback of him dying. That death could have had so much more of an impact if it weren't just spoiled for us in the scene before. And then immediately after, when it cuts back to the graveyard, Superman has a big exposition dump to Lois Lane. He's like, my father taught me this, and this is what I learned when this happened. So he's explaining what happened in the flashback that we just saw, what he learned from it, and how it impacts him. It's not well written. The non-linear style of this film, they tried to make it work. They tried to make the movie smart, but it just did not work.
And here's the thing. There are some good ideas in Superman's flashbacks. Like, they aren't
absolutely
all bad. Like, for instance, the first one that we see, the one we just talked about, I actually kind of like Superman getting overwhelmed by his super senses as his powers start developing.
But in the sequence of the events that it's told, it's just not done in a very compelling way. In terms of that scene's relation to the entire film as a whole.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So yeah, I absolutely agree. There's a lot of really great ideas in here. It's just, I don't know, it's all wrapped up in a mediocre package, and that's why we're here reviewing it today, to find out what exactly is the cause of that. But that was another thing that really struck me in relation to the original Superman film from the 70s. Both films have a very, shall we say, strange pacing, I want to say.
Yeah.
Basically, the way certain events unfold in both films is a bit strange, but for different reasons. In the original one, it was like, oh yeah, baby Superman spent literal years in that pod on his way to Earth. Then, when he gets up to the North Pole and gets to the Fortress of Solitude, the hologram of his father's like, yeah, I'm gonna take over your mind for the next 12 years. And then it cuts to 12 years later where he has not been in control of his own body. And it's like, okay, that's really weird, kind of off-putting. But then in this one, it's like the events are told out of order for the purpose of being a tour de force and being very intelligent and compelling. It just has the exact opposite effect. So both movies have really weird pacing for different reasons.
In the present, Superman, I keep calling him Superman. He's not Superman yet. And honestly, he never becomes Superman in this movie. Not really.
Also, Kevin Costner plays the dad.
Oh God, we'll talk more about Kevin Costner later. Kevin Costner's really good in this, but there's a but.
Yeah.
So back in the present, Clark Kent, he is working as a waiter in a restaurant, and a guy's a dick to him, and he smashes the guy's truck up.
Mm-hmm.
Yay, Superman. Then, more flashbacks of him as a kid. He's in the school bus coming home, and the bus randomly crashes off a bridge, because I don't know why it crashed generally. Like, a tire just explodes and it swerves. It's weird.
But he puts the stop sign out, so that's fun. At least he's obeying the rules of the road.
And teenage Clark saves everyone on the bus, because it's like filling with water, and he opens the back door. And honestly, he didn't really have to show off his powers to open the door. Also, don't those buses have holes on the top? Like, I've been in a school bus before, but whatever. Yeah, Superman, as a kid, he shows off his powers by saving a bunch of people, including a guy who bullied him. And then, when he goes home, Daddy Kevin Costner is kind of mad at him for it because gotta hide your powers because people won't accept you.
To be honest, I don't think Kevin Costner is a great actor. Then again, I haven't seen a whole lot of his films, but I don't know, he does do a fine job with what he's given here. Like I said, there is so much obligatory exposition, just info dump. Like, the characters directly talking about what's happening, what they're feeling, what they've learned in their past experiences, and it's just, again, lazy writing. But that was another thing. I didn't mind the bus crash scene. It's very...
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
I was making fun of, there's some dumb logic in it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't mind it. I like Superman just saving people intrinsically, because that's his whole deal. And I don't mind this one scene where he saves people. My problem is that it's setting up, this is a movie where Superman doesn't save people, and we'll get into it. Like,
yeah.
When he goes back, his dad scolds him for saving people, because one of the core things in this movie is Superman has to hide who he is, because people will fear him.
My thing with that scene, it's not so much the fact that it's a bad scene, it just kind of puts into perspective the idea that there is very, very little, if any, subtlety in this movie. And I'm not talking about, like, the giant 45-minute action scene at the end, you know? I'm not just talking about that. It's just the idea that Superman, he learns all these lessons by these massive events happening to him. Like, he has to use his powers to save people, even if it means exposing himself and his powers. Like, he did that because of a bus crash that, like, almost killed dozens of children, and he chose to save them. And it's like, and another, probably my biggest example of this is when his dad dies. He's, like, sucked up by a tornado, and he could have sped off to save him, but his dad told him not to. I don't know, like, I don't mind that scene. I like the idea that Jonathan Kent was actually kind of being a hero in that scene. He was saving people, he was saved the little girl, saved the dog, and he's like, I'm willing to sacrifice my life to protect yours, essentially, by not allowing yourself to expose who you are and your powers to the world. I mean, that kind of logic is kind of stupid, but it's like, I didn't mind that scene. It's just the idea that, say, for example, in the original film, it's like Jonathan Kent, he died of a heart attack. Well, that for me is so much more compelling than he gets sucked up by a tornado after a giant, intense action
we
scene.
Keep going to this tornado scene because it's the infamous scene in this movie. Why don't you skip ahead and describe it now, because we keep getting drawn into it like a tornado.
Right, absolutely.
In one of the flashbacks, Clark Kent and his family are driving when they come across a tornado. And they, like, get out of the car and they run back. And then Clark's like, hey, I can go save people. And Jonathan's like, no, you can't show people who you are. I don't like...
Yeah, Jonathan, while Clark takes Martha to the overpass to protect themselves, Jonathan runs out, helps a woman save her daughter who's trapped in the back seat. He runs out back, saves their dog, but in doing so...
because Martha left the dog in the car during the tornado. Jonathan Kent died because Martha was a dumbass.
Martha!
I like that Jonathan Kent's death is kind of heroic, but he dies because of someone's stupidity.
It's not a bad scene, it's just the idea that it's just so over the top that, like, Jonathan Kent dying in the original film, it's like he died of a heart attack, which in many ways instilled...
Superman learns he is not strong enough to save everyone, and then the ending is him saying, fuck it, I have to be strong enough.
But in this one, it's just like, oh yeah.
Superman could have saved Jonathan Kent. Like,
yeah.
He chooses to let his father die because his dad told him, hey, let me die. Which, by the way, real shitty thing to do to your son, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch a Superman movie where Superman stands back and watches as his dad dies, even though he can save him easily. Like, I don't want to watch any movie where the hero does that, because I don't like this hero anymore. And Kevin Costner's a phenomenal actor, and that distracts you from the fact that Jonathan Kett's kind of a dick.
Yeah. It's just the writing. They took his character in such an unlikable direction. And that's kind of also my other thing with Zack Snyder movies as a whole. Like, I've seen interviews with him, and, like, you can tell he likes, like, really dark, fucked up things and, like, story and stuff like that.
I have some quotes. Shall I read one?
Yes.
I had a buddy who tried getting me into normal comic books, but I was all like, no one is having sex or killing each other. This isn't really doing it for me. I was a little broken that way. So when Watchmen came along, I was like, this is more my scene. Because that's why Watchmen's good, because there's rape and murder, not because there's, like, philosophy and, like, well-written characters. It's so much more mature because there was a rape in it, brah.
I don't like the Dark Knight movies. I don't think that they're gritty enough. I mean, yeah, sure, you're watching the movie like, oh man, Batman could totally die in this scene. But at no point do you ever think, God, Batman could totally get raped in this scene. In my movies, Batman could totally get raped.
And both those quotes are from the same interview. They were, like, within 5 minutes of each other. God, I really don't like Zack Snyder.
Neither do I. But I've never met him, so again, I'm trying to be respectful.
Since when are you respectful? We aren't respectful to... We insult directors all the time on this show.
You know what? To be perfectly honest, I don't even know. I just have this feeling where I'm like, look, at the end of the day, his movies, the ones I've seen at least, they're not all horrible. I think he's an idiot who doesn't understand what the hell he's doing with these characters, and I think it's messed up that Warner Brothers and DC gave him complete creative control over their entire DC cinematic universe, and I think it's really fucked up that he makes these shit decisions where the best DCU movie he makes is this one, which is at best mediocre, and I think it's so fucked up that he will make decisions that are bafflingly unintelligent, and yet millions of people on the internet who follow him and love him will defend him, will die on the hill of defending him. Like, say for example, okay, I'm gonna play this card. Batman killing in Batman v Superman. He kills people. That is Batman's one rule. He does not kill people. But in Batman v Superman, he kills people. And yes, it does make sense. They do need to set up Batman as a guy who could potentially kill Superman. But it would have been so much more interesting if he would have been, like, struggling with that idea the entire movie. He's like, I don't kill, but I might have to. Like, that would have been so much more interesting, but nope, we just make him killing people. But the thing that infuriates me is the fact that in his movie, he'll have Batman killing people. Imagine in, like, 2008, 2005, 2012, imagine if Christopher Nolan said, it doesn't make sense to me why a vigilante wouldn't kill people, so, for the Dark Knight trilogy, Batman's going to be killing people, all of it. Those exact same Zack Snyder fanboys would bitch and moan, create petitions, riot in the fucking streets, you know, not literally, but they would, like...
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. They would, like, fucking tear the shit out of Christopher Nolan and the Dark Knight movies because Batman would kill people.
Nah, they would like it because edgy.
No, not even. I really wouldn't think so. Personally, I really would not think so. Had Christopher Nolan done that, they would have torn the shit out of him. Yet Zack Snyder, a lesser filmmaker who makes far less quality movies, he does that, and suddenly all those same dumbass virgin Reddit fanboys are like, oh no, this is the greatest superhero movie ever made, and like defending him tooth and nail. Fuck you. Like, that's my rant about Zack Snyder. The reason why I want to be respectful is because a lot of my feelings towards him aren't necessarily him as an artist. It's like, I have my thoughts on it, but that doesn't piss me off. What pisses me off is the idea that these fucking idiots out there defend him tooth and nail on a bunch of bullshit. That's my thoughts on it.
Here's the thing. Like we've said before, we record 2 weeks in advance, so Avatar is still on my mind. In that, we discussed the fact that M. Night Shyamalan did not make a good adaptation, but he very clearly liked the characters and the story he was adapting. This is perhaps, and this is why the movie pisses me off so much, this is perhaps the only time I've ever seen, actually no, Starship Troopers also did this, but this is the only time I've ever seen a superhero movie made by someone who actively detests the superhero he's adapting. Someone who doesn't get that Batman should not kill because at his core, he's that scared 8-year-old in the alley. Someone who has to fight against producers to have this movie's ending where Superman snaps a guy's neck because he thinks it'll be really cool and edgy. That is not just someone who doesn't get the characters, someone who actively dislikes everything those characters stand for and everything that makes them good. And that infuriates me that this guy 4 different times has been given the ability to spend millions of dollars to make a Superman movie when he actively dislikes Superman.
It's this guy who hates these characters, who doesn't understand the characters, everything that we've talked about today. For some reason, it's this man that people want a 4.5-hour cut of Justice League from and are celebrating and anticipating its release. Are you kidding me? Come on. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think he's a horrible filmmaker. I think he has his own style, and that's fine, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, it's like, I think it's stupid that DC and Warner Brothers, they hired a guy whose primary concern when making a movie is having a cool looking shot as opposed to telling a very compelling story. Like, for some reason, it's this man who wants to have Batman get raped in this movie, who hates Superman, who doesn't understand any of the characters. It's this guy that everybody worships and celebrates and are, for years, for going on 4 years, have been petitioning for a 4.5-hour cut of a movie that's probably gonna be shit, but they're gonna love no matter what because they're Zack Snyder fanboys.
Yeah, this is probably gonna be our most negative review ever.
I mean, again, my hatred of this situation is not with the movie itself necessarily, or with Zack Snyder as a filmmaker.
Mine is.
I just want to be clear. For me personally, objectively, I think this movie is mediocre. I think Zack Snyder is a mediocre filmmaker. My problem is the toxic fandom that follows them and how I disagree with it, and for the simple fact of disagreeing with it, they're gonna find it so controversial and they're gonna bitch and moan for so long. That's my problem with it. Isn't necessarily the fact that this movie, it's just, it got so much wrong, and yet so many people are fighting tooth and nail in defense of it. And had literally any other filmmaker made this movie, I guarantee you those exact same people would be doing nothing but petitioning to have this filmmaker's career ruined. You know? Like, I guarantee you, if Zack Snyder had made The Last Jedi, Rose would not be as hated of a character.
Well, you see, he could never make The Last Jedi because for all the problems in that movie, it's a movie that understands that characters have arcs and need to be human and that there are things more important than explosions.
Yeah, very true. I'm just saying, like, something that those exact same people would hate, but if Zack Snyder's name is attached to it, they'd love, you know?
Maybe. So just cleaning off these flashbacks, there's one, Kevin Costner's so good in this, but I don't like that there's a character that his whole thing is Superman shouldn't be Superman, and Superman listens to him, okay? I don't like that Superman doesn't save people, even if it's what his father wants. Any good version of Superman would have flown into that tornado. I cannot stress enough how much I dislike that scene.
Yeah.
But a few more things in the flashbacks. There's some good stuff with Kevin Costner being a good dad. There's a scene where he shows Clark the pod and he says, I took part of this, like the key thing, to like a metal expert, and he said that it's not any element on the periodic table. Which, God, I hate that trope. That's not how the periodic table works. Yes, it's on the periodic table. No, Iron Man 2, you can't just make a new element. Ugh, I hate that trope. But anyway, back in this movie's plot, the US military has found this crashed spaceship in the Arctic. And reporter Lois Lane, played by Amy Adams, is invited there for a reason. I don't know why the US military is inviting just some random reporter, albeit a Pulitzer Prize-winning one, to see their top secret stuff, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. And Clark Kent is just working at that site, coincidentally. Who'da thunk?
I mean, he probably went there because he heard spaceship, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
also,
that does
Lois meets Christopher Maloney's character. I forget his name, the, like, lieutenant colonel guy. I just called him Stabler in my notes. He'll be important later on. Elliot Stabler's a military dude in this movie. So anyway, at night, Lois sees this mysterious man, Clark Kent, sneak into this alien spaceship that the military found in the Arctic, and she follows him in because she has no sense of self-preservation, which is a common theme with Lois in basically any Superman story. Lois wants to die.
Yeah.
If Superman didn't exist, Lois would have been killed years ago in any Superman story. But she follows him into the ship. And Clark Kent's going around this ship. He plugs this key thing that was left with him as a baby by Jor-El into the console, and the ship, starts up. A security drone tries to murder Lois, and Clark, cauterizes her wounds with his heat vision. Such a happy first meeting. Meet cute. Oh, I ran into you on the street. Oh, we're neighbors. Oh, I had to cauterize your wounds after you got stabbed following me. Start of a beautiful relationship. I bet they're gonna be talking about that when they're elderly. Do you remember our first meeting where I got stabbed? Oh, I do, honey.
Do you remember how I left you in the frozen wasteland of the Arctic just so I could fly away?
Yeah,
Get some alone time?
Shit, yeah, he just leaves her outside the military base.
Right.
She would have probably frozen to death if they didn't find her. But anyway, now that Lois is gone, Clark investigates the ship, and he finds a hologram of Jor-El, because they had to bring that back from Superman the movie. I didn't like it then, I don't like it now. Let Jor-El be dead, don't have him be manipulating Clark's actions.
Right.
And Jor-El shows Superman his costume, and can I say... So, they with Jor-El tried to do this thing, Krypton, controlled who people were. I wanted people to decide their own destinies. Now, son, put on this costume and become a superhero, which is what I have been planning for you for 30 years.
It's stupid. It really is.
Stupid. Russell Crowe's a good actor in this. I don't like his character very much, but he gives a good performance. I don't like the hologram effect because there is no effect. He's just kind of there.
I don't know. There's so much in that cold opening on Krypton that just could have been completely cut out of the movie. The whole subplot where Kal-El is the first natural birth. And I'm gonna say it right now, the whole Codex skull thing, fucking stupid.
It is.
It's stupid and could have been cut out of this movie entirely, and literally it would have been better. All it is a MacGuffin. And for those of you who don't know what a MacGuffin is, it's an item in a film, or in a story, that the audience does not care about, but we're told that we have to care about it because it's very important, pivotal to the story and to the characters, and that's why they're trying to fight for it. They did the exact same thing with the mother boxes in the Justice League movie, and they did it right here with the Codex, and it's so stupid. Basically, General Zod needs the Codex to fulfill his plan, and Superman has it, so they're trying to fight for it. But, literally all he could have done is, yeah, we have the DNA materials available to do that without it, so...
I mean, it's a MacGuffin, is its purpose, but more than that, it's a MacGuffin that brings in this weird Zod being obsessed with eugenics plotline that doesn't really get fully fleshed out.
Literally, it's so stupid. What is the purpose of this? Anyway, back to the plot. Yeah, Superman is on the ship. His dad shows him his costume. He teaches him how to fly, how to focus his energy and fly.
Side note, we need to pause because that's the only good scene in the movie, and I need to talk about it. That's a really good scene. Superman's first flight. They have the great Hans Zimmer music playing. They have Jor-El give a narration that's taken straight from All Stars Superman by Grant Morrison, which is actually well written, like the famous "In time, they will meet you in the sun" speech. It's a really good scene. Just Superman learning to fly as this music is playing and there's this great narration. It's the only good scene in this movie, okay? Bravo. We talked about earlier, this movie, it looks amazing, and this movie looks too amazing, because this movie would probably be a 4 if it didn't look amazing, and I'm mad that I have to give it a higher score because of the visual effects only, but the visual effects artists did a really good job. I don't like what their visual effects skills were used for and how it relates to the plot, but they did a good job.
Yeah.
And the first fight scene is amazing.
But in terms of the visual style of the movie, yes, absolutely. That's one of the big reasons why I can't say that this movie is bad, because there are some good ideas brought up and some good aspects of it. The best arguably being the cinematography and the CGI and the green screen, stuff like that. But I would say, for me, it's like, yes, this movie looks pretty.
Asterisk, except for the blue filter over everything.
Oh, yes, that too. But it's like, what I feel like a lot of people just don't understand is there's a difference between your movie looking pretty and having good visual storytelling. You know? Like, for example, it's like my argument with Star Wars Rogue One versus The Last Jedi. Both films look phenomenal. The cinematography in both of those movies is great. But with Rogue One, it's like, it looks pretty, and that's kind of the extent of it. For example, the shot of the Death Star blocking out the sun on that planet. It's like, that's a crazy good shot. Like, it looks gorgeous. But at the end of the day, what is that? How does that serve the purpose of the? How does it, like, what purpose does that serve within?
Yeah, the Vader scene is cool, but it really doesn't add anything to the plot besides being cool.
Right. What do these cool visuals add?
But Luke's duel with Kylo Ren, it looks cool, and it perfectly captures the philosophies of the two characters and advances the story.
Exactly. Like, how does all these cool shots, albeit very well shot movie in Rogue One, like, how do these cool shots serve the story, the themes, the characters? How does it do that? No, it doesn't really do anything. It's just kind of a cool shot, which means that that shot didn't have to look like that in order for the story to be told. Now, on the flip side, The Last Jedi, that movie has fantastic visual storytelling, like the way characters are framed in the shot, the way certain characters move. It's like the film had to be shot like that in order for the story to be told. So it's like there comes a point where, yes, both movies look beautiful, but one just, that's it. And the other one, it looks beautiful for the purpose of telling the story. Man of Steel just looks pretty. That's it.
We sure are clever, like, as if this review wasn't going to get despised by many, many people for being really critical of Zack Snyder. Oh yeah, let's just praise The Last Jedi a bunch!
Fuck.
Oh boy, people are gonna love this one!
Man of Steel sucks. The Last Jedi is a great movie. Fuck you.
Last Jedi's really good. Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. It's very messy. The pacing is awful, but it has great cinematography and the writing is really good. I know the pacing's bad. I know it had some writing choices you may disagree with, but I really like them. Whatever. That's a story for another day. Back to Man of Steel. Oh god, we're gonna get hate mail. Yes! I've never gotten hate mail from this show before.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've gotten a lot of hate comments on TikTok.
Oh, I've gotten hate mail for other stuff, definitely, but not for this. Because no one watches this.
Yeah. If and when it happens, which, knowing me, it's going to happen soon. I don't know. I'd be down to, like, frame it on a photo.
Yeah.
You know?
So, plot of the movie. Zod, who's escaped from the Phantom Zone, finds out about Earth because the ship got turned on. And he goes to Earth, and admittedly, it's a really cool scene where all the lights on the Kent farm go out and their TV comes on and it's just this message of these staticky figures explaining their goals, and it cuts to this happening all around the world. Zod takes control of every TV on the planet and announces, "Give us the Kryptonian who is hiding here or we will destroy your planet." It's cool. It's creepy. I liked it.
Yeah. But how the hell did General Zod... Like, General Zod, all he was in the first scene. And then out of nowhere, he's, like, out of the Phantom Zone. And we're like, wait, the hell? How did this happen? And then they go on to later explain, but, like, I don't know. It's not as big of a flaw as the tornado scene, but still. I felt like him coming back kind of felt a little jarring to me.
And, well, you know, Superman... I have to turn myself over or the world will be destroyed. So he instantly, without even thinking about it, he has to save people, has to protect them. He goes off and he turns himself into Zod. Just kidding. He struggles with it for like a few days. He goes to a church, which I have really mixed feelings about. On one hand, there is something deeply human about him going to a church to get guidance. Maybe not because Superman's supposed to be this ideal, this is what America is about. He's the core of humanity, the like paying it as specific Christianity. Maybe that's not great, but there is something deeply human about him going and seeking advice from someone. It could have been him seeking advice from Jonathan Kent. That would have been better. That would have been the father he could go with. Hold on. Rewriting. I just realized how to make this movie work. Oh, also in the scene where he goes to the church, there's a scene of him sitting under a stained glass window of Jesus Christ in the exact same pose as Jesus. This film is not subtle.
No, not in one bit.
Well, at least it's not the scene later on where he flies away from Zod's ship and for some reason he is T-posing and it's supposed to be, oh, he's like crucified. But because of how T-posing has become a meme, it's just funny now.
From there, Superman turns himself into the military, where also, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the general, I believe, in the movie, a lot of storyboard details have come out from the Justice League movie, and Zack Snyder was intending, or has been intending, that the general in Man of Steel be revealed to be Martian Manhunter all along.
What?
Because that makes sense,
what?
right?
No, what?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Also, the dead Robin in Batman v Superman, yeah, that's not Jason Todd. That's Dick Grayson.
Oh, right. I remember how they did nothing with that. That was cool.
Yep.
We don't like Zack Snyder.
Nope, no we don't. And that is a really cool image when he turns himself into the military. That is a really cool shot. So much so they used it for the poster, or one of the posters, is like Superman in handcuffs being escorted by a bunch of military guys. That's a really cool image, but like, yeah, that's just a cool shot.
Yeah.
That's really all
also,
that is.
And this is my big problem with this movie. Superman had to be forced by Zod threatening to destroy the world to be Superman and reveal himself publicly. He on multiple occasions has to be forced to be Superman.
And you know, for me, I'm often a defender of comic book superhero movies for taking creative liberties, like when we reviewed X-Men. That movie is very, very inaccurate, but the choices it makes in the film are to better serve the direction of the story they're going. But it's like, at a point in this movie has a shit story, so it's at that point it's like, okay, you can take Superman in this direction that you're taking him, for lack of a better word, gloomy direction, but at the end of the day it's like, what purpose does that serve to serve the story? I don't know, Zack Snyder just likes gloomy, dark shit. That's it.
Yeah, and Superman, he's supposed to be hopeful. He's supposed to be kind and bright and funny. Like, there's no warmth or charisma to Superman in this movie. He's just dull and moody. And to be honest, that made the first half of this movie really, really boring. Like, once the endless battle starts later on, I mean, it gets a bit more interesting, but that's just because shit's happening for once. Like, Superman being mopey isn't interesting because I don't care about the character. I really don't care about a lot of the characters in this movie. We haven't really talked about Amy Adams as Lois Lane. I don't think she has great chemistry with Henry Cavill, and I'm not super fond of her take on Lois Lane. Like, she lacks the spunk, the I am arrogant, I am the greatest reporter ever, you can't tell me what to do thing that Lois is supposed to have. Amy Adams is just kind of boring love interest.
Right, and their romance is so forced and so fake. It doesn't make any sense. She's just kind of there to be the romantic interest to him. And that sucks because Amy Adams is a great actor.
Yeah, and I'm sure Henry Cavill is better than this in other stuff. Actually, I haven't seen him in anything but this, but surely he isn't this bad in everything.
I mean, to be honest, the only good movie that he's done is Mission Impossible 6.
Oh god, that is not a lot of good movies.
No. I mean, he was fine in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., but that was also like a forgettable Guy Ritchie movie, so...
Oh, actually, I've heard he's good in The Witcher. I haven't seen it, though. I want to play the games first, but I don't have time, like, to do a 100-hour RPG. I have too much on my plate. Anyway, whatever. Back to the movie. Oh, actually, no, not back to the movie. There's a point that I wrote down in my notes, but I forgot to bring up. The only good scene in the movie, the first fight scene. In hindsight, that kind of makes me angry.
Yeah?
Because it directly quotes All-Star Superman, which is the Superman story. It's a story where Superman is charismatic and kind and cartoony and above all human. Like, the defining scene from that, probably the most famous, is where he just hugs this girl who's trying to commit suicide and tells her, no, you are stronger than you think you are. All-Star Superman's great. And Zack Snyder, or at least someone closely involved in the writing of this movie, read it and they still made this.
I really don't understand. Like, the Superman in this movie, he literally would start fighting the bad guy. He'd look at some people running down the sidewalk, and he'd just be like, get inside. And then destroy the entire city in the fight with that villain. And then at the end, he'd find out that the girl who was gonna kill herself, he couldn't save her, and he would just kind of stand there about to cry because it's all gloomy and sad.
Yeah.
I could have saved her, but I was too busy doing something else.
So, the military hands Superman over to the Kryptonians. And also the Kryptonians want Lois because reasons.
Right.
Because, like, I don't know, Superman cares about her.
Yeah. I will say, though, basically the secondary antagonist of this film, General Zod's second-in-command, Fiora L., she's a fucking badass. Like, I'll give her credit for that. Credit where credit's due. Not a big fan of her character, but she's a badass in an action scene.
Yeah, also, it's ridiculous. I think he's named to this. Wasn't he named Wad in Superman 2?
Probably.
Like, the big guy who works for Zod? He is so fucking big in this. He's like Hulk-sized. Absolute unit!
Yeah.
So, Superman and Lois get taken away by Zod. And actually, when Zod's men say, hey, we're taking Lois too, Christopher Maloney's like, hey, that wasn't part of the deal. You're not taking one of ours. Which is kind of nice. I like his character.
Yeah.
But they give her over anyway.
Yeah.
So Superman goes to Zod's ship. And as soon as he gets there, he just starts dying.
Yeah.
Because the atmosphere is wrong on Zod's ship. I guess they're generating red sunlight. Oh, actually, hey, why isn't Zod's ship all red? That would have been a good way to be comics accurate and give some visual distinction from everything being blue.
Nope.
But anyway, the red sunlight on Zod's ship, it makes Superman sick and he almost dies, which I actually kind of like. Instead of taking away his powers, I like when kryptonite and red sunlight make Superman physically ill. And they imprison Superman and they're like, oh, we're gonna destroy the Earth anyway, because I don't know.
He explains it away as, like, his sole purpose in life, because he was one of those unnatural births, where it's like his sole purpose was to serve Krypton by being a soldier and protect it, and it's like, now Krypton's dead, but he has the opportunity to terraform the Earth and turn it into a new Krypton, use the Codex to create a bunch of new baby Kryptonians, basically create a Krypton 2.0 out of Earth, killing everyone on the planet.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Why Earth? Like, he's already terraforming. He's changing the atmosphere, the planet's mass, and the sunlight. You don't have to do this on Earth, Zod. You could go to Mars. You could go to literally any planet. He doesn't have to destroy Earth. It isn't, as the film tries to paint it, like he's being forced to destroy this planet to save his people. He wants to destroy the planet for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
He's not sympathetic because he's being evil for evil's sake.
Yeah. I don't know. And it's like that scene where he's telling, where Superman's like going through that whatever shit, he's like dying or whatever. As he's going through that, Zod is like psychically communicating with him, having another big exposition dump as to how he got there, what his plan is, what's going on.
Admittedly, it's an exposition dump that looks cool, with like the giant sun and the destroyed buildings and Superman drowning in skulls.
There's a part where he's like, as soon as Krypton blew up, the Phantom Zone thing was destroyed, and that released them from the Phantom Zone, so he spent like the last 30 years scouring the universe for the Codex. And in one of the planets, they found a world engine.
Terraforming machine.
Yeah. Like, here, let's get a really good long pause. A good shot at that one, because that might come in handy later. Yeah, he tells him his plan. He's going to terraform Earth into the next Krypton, kill everyone on the planet, and while he's doing that, Superman drowns in a sea, an ocean of human skulls. Which, again, as I've mentioned before, I am down for creative license. But Superman is not the character to be drowning in skulls, you know? Not only is that not Superman, it was completely out of place in the sequence of shots in that scene. Like, it just, I don't know, where he's talking with Zod, and then there's a wide shot, and there's just everywhere is skulls. And then he starts drowning in it. Like, that was so out of place in the movie that, like, it's just shock value, you know? No subtlety.
And, I mean, I'm okay with Zod being intimidating. I don't mind the Sea of Skulls hallucination. But, like, Superman having to face this ultimate evil and save people, that's kind of what Superman's all about. And, you know, I'm sure Superman's gonna save so much people once the 45 minutes of action scenes start.
Oh, yeah.
So Lois, she breaks out of her cell with the help of Ghost Jor-El. Side note, why wasn't there a ghost of Superman's mom? Why'd Jor-El only take himself? Kind of dickish. Whatever. Lois and Ghost Jor-El escape. They set Superman free. And now... the pacing in this film is kind of off because all the action happens in a row. Like 45 minutes of fight scenes. Oh god. And we're gonna probably blaze past a lot of it. Superman and Lois fly back to Smallville. The Kryptonians show up to get Superman's ship because they think that the Codex is in it. They destroy Smallville. Like, they just wreck it. So many people must have died because Smallville is absolutely destroyed. That town is not recovering.
Oh no. A scene I did kind of like was the one where Zod and Fiora and all his goons show up at the Kent farm and they start threatening Martha, and then out of nowhere Superman comes flying in, slams Zod, and seeing him like throw him through those like giant pillars in the cornfields, and he's punching him like, "You can't threaten my mother," or whatever he says. I don't know.
Yeah, that is kind of cool.
Yeah, that was a cool shot.
And also, there's a scene where Superman, like, he catches a pilot from one of the military planes that gets shot down, and like, okay, yeah, that's only the third time an hour and a half in that Superman saves someone, but hey, progress. That is progress. But also, during all that fight, Superman has a little one-on-one with Fiora, or whatever her name is, Zod's main minion. And she's like, "We have evolved away from morality, Kal-El, and that's why you're gonna die, because evolution always wins." And that's not how evolution works. The fact that he has morality and is the same species as you... Shut up, Fiora, you dipshit. That's not how anything works.
Right. If anything, he is equally as evolved as you.
Same species! Morality is a cultural thing, moron!
Yeah.
In fact, actually, considering you can feel empathy, that means you evolve to feel empathy, which means you evolve to have morals. Whatever. Also, in the just obliteration of Smallville, the military keeps trying to kill Superman because they're idiots.
Yeah.
Like, it isn't a fear thing, it's a they're too stupid to understand that trying to kill the guy protecting you is a bad idea. They're just morons.
Right.
And at the end, they all point their guns at him, and they're like, "Wait a minute. Hi, I'm Christopher Maloney. Superman's not a bad guy. Let's not kill him." And, I mean, we couldn't anyway, but let's team up with him.
Zod finds out that the Codex is not in Superman's ship. It is embedded within Superman. He has all the DNA of...
Why?
Because reasons.
Zod starts terraforming by shooting a giant laser through the Earth and utterly destroying Metropolis.
Yep.
It's like 100 9/11s. And this film, it has so much destruction. It's like, oh, look at this cool shot of this building being destroyed and everyone dying. And like, yeah, it's a well-made shot, but it's just destruction and destruction and destruction and destruction with no real weight behind it. Like, it's just destruction porn. It's like the Transformers movies, one of which actually shares cinematographer with this movie.
Of course. But for me, it's like, yes, the action's very well shot, and it is interesting and well choreographed, but it's like, at a point, it just becomes so boring. Because it's like, there's nothing at stake. I mean, at one point, Lawrence Fishburne, who plays, like, the lead editor of the Daily Planet...
Yeah, he's Perry White. Lawrence Fishburne's in this, and he's a good actor, and he doesn't really have screen time, but he's good in what he has.
Right, at one point, him and the bald dude from House of Cards... they're trying to help this girl who had no dialogue before that scene, from what I can recall. She's pinned under a bunch of rocks, but like the world engine's about to kill her, but she's like freaking out. But Lawrence Fishburne, he like grabs her hand and lets her know that like, listen, you're not alone. We're gonna try and help you. And Superman, he flies down to the East Indian Ocean, where the world engine is, and he destroys it by flying up through the beam.
And it's actually, I'll admit it, it's cool. He's being weakened because it's destroying Earth's atmosphere. He's being forced down by the gravity, and just he rises up and he flies through it just in time to save these characters. And you know what? It works. But I think it would have worked more. It works because Lawrence Fishburne and I don't know her name, the actress who plays the character who didn't have like any lines before that, are both doing really, really good acting. Like, if this was in a movie where those characters had been fleshed out and it wasn't a Superman movie, that would have been a phenomenal scene.
Yeah,
but
exactly. And that's my thing, is it's like, it was really cool in the moment and inspirational, the idea that, you know, people are there to help. It's a dire situation, and because we have empathy, we get to connect with that, and it was really cool. But at the end of the day, it's like, these characters had no development. One of them, the one whose life is at stake, she had no dialogue before this scene. I don't even know if she was in any scene before this. So there's no greater emotional weight to it because we just don't know and we don't care.
Hey Riley, I looked it up. What is her name? I will give you 3 guesses.
Damn, who else is in Superman's lore? I'm gonna throw out a dumbass guess and say Selina Kyle.
But no.
No. What's her name? Martha? Martha!
No. Her name is Jenny. It's mentioned like once or twice. Yeah, she's not really a character aside from... You need to develop characters to make us care for them. And I don't care about anyone in this movie. And yeah, the action's cool. And another thing, like, getting back to the destruction porn. Destruction because, ooh, cool explosion. It kind of goes against the whole point of Superman. Like, they bring up this idea that... And it's taken from the comics. It's one of the core themes behind Superman, that he is an icon of hope, that people look up to him because he's a deeply human man who is blessed with godlike power, and he could be a dictator, he could be a god, but no, he uses that power solely to help others, to be kind. That's why I love Superman. There's that idea. There's also the idea that he's inspirational because he's out there. He is going to save you. He will never stop fighting for you. That's why Superman is an icon of hope. Not just because he contains the DNA of Krypton so they can remake the planet. Like, he's not Jor-El's hope. He's Earth's hope because he saves people.
Yeah.
But, I mean, who the fuck is going to have hope in Superman after this? He failed in this movie. Yeah, he stopped Zod from literally destroying the Earth. Millions of people are dead because he failed. And the film doesn't frame it that way, but that's what this is. It's a movie where Superman's bad at being Superman and millions of people die.
Right.
And this is the world's introduction to him. It's millions of people dying, and then he snaps a guy's neck. No one's going to treat him as an icon of hope or look up to him. They're going to be afraid because he failed them. That is his introduction. His first mission is millions of people dying because he wasn't good enough.
Right. That's not what Superman's supposed to be. The reason, little off topic, the reason why I guessed Selina Kyle earlier is because it's Zack Snyder very often. In like Batman v Superman, Jimmy Olsen was killed off in the first scene. And it's just like, yeah, that soldier that got shot, yeah, that was Jimmy Olsen. So it's not I don't put it past Zack Snyder to shoehorn really important characters into the dumbest cameos ever. But getting back on track, yes, I completely agree with you on that. Like, it's just a betrayal of who Superman is. And my thoughts on why the action gets boring is because mostly there is nothing emotionally at stake here. Like, you take, for example, the movie Mad Max Fury Road, where not only does the setting change of all the action, like, the conflict is consistently changing, as well as what's emotionally at stake. Like, for example, when one of the women that they're trying to save gets captured again. Okay, now we gotta worry about that. When Max ends up getting knocked onto another one of the trucks. Okay, now we gotta worry about that. When Furiosa gets stabbed. we gotta worry about that. So it's like, we have something at stake, and that's the characters we've grown to know and love. But it's like, the conflict is constantly changing, and what's the difficulty and intensity of what is happening is evolving as the scenes go on. But in this one, it's just two really powerful beings destroying a city, and that's why it gets boring, because there's no emotional weight. And the only thing at stake here is Jenny, who was not in any other scenes, at least didn't have dialogue in any other scenes. So we don't give a shit about her. We don't give a shit about any of the characters in this movie. Zack Snyder has a very, very interesting way of taking what could be these incredibly well-developed, well-fleshed-out stories and just makes them the dullest, most nonsensical versions of themselves they can be.
Yeah, so while Superman is in the South Indian Ocean flying into the Earth engine to destroy it, Christopher Maloney and the military dudes are trying to take out the Kryptonian ship by using a plane to crash Superman's ship that he came to Earth in, because that'll open a mini black hole and suck them in, because Phantom Zone, Techno, Babble, whatever. Christopher Maloney is going to crash Superman's ship into the Kryptonian ship. Cool. Lois Lane comes along because Lois Lane comes along.
Yeah.
Like, her job is to turn the key and turn on Superman's ship, but she messes that up.
Right, and all they had to do to solve that was turn the pot a little bit.
Hundreds of people probably died in the time that it took them to figure out how to turn the pod.
These characters are so stupid.
Yeah, I don't like characters dying because other characters are dipshits.
Right.
Or maybe in like a Fargo type thing where it's used for irony, but definitely not when it's supposed to be serious and sad and touching and Superman's dad died because Martha left the dog in the car. But anyway, Feora, or whatever her name is, she breaks into the plane to destroy it. And Christopher Maloney, who is a better hero than Superman. And that's disappointing.
Yeah.
Earlier in the movie, when they had a face-off, she said, "A good death is its own reward." And right before he blows up Zod's ship and kills Feora and all the Kryptonians, Christopher Maloney says, "A good death is its own reward." He's a cool character in this. He should have been Superman. Well, shouldn't have been Superman. There shouldn't have been Superman in this movie. If you remove Superman from this movie, and it was just US military versus Zod, it might have worked.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so they destroy the ship.
And all the Kryptonians are dead. Psych! Zod's still here.
They fight a little while, he takes off his armor, and I was just wearing black spandex that looks stupid with that dumbass haircut and that horrible goatee.
You see, when they genetically engineered him, because genetic engineering, it's like character creation in RPGs, you have to have low in some stats. Zod, he is really high in strength, but man, he is low in decision making and haircut and being intimidating. Those are his dump stats.
Yeah, so they fight for a little while, destroy the city. Zod struggles with his powers for a little bit, but because he's spent his entire life focusing his strength and his will, he can gain a handle over it a lot quicker. And they end up in a subway station. Zod starts trying to laser this family that's cowering in the corner. Superman snaps his neck, killing him, and then screams. And then the next scene, he's moved on from killing someone. So, I don't know.
I don't like Superman killing in general. I really don't like Superman introducing himself to the world by killing. I really, really don't like that Zack Snyder had to fight producer Chris Nolan to have the movie end with Superman killing, which means he was really attached to Superman doing the murder.
Can you imagine Christopher Nolan just being in that situation? Why the fuck do I care? That's against Superman's, but just getting to a point fine, fuck it, do it. The other thing for me with him killing people or killing Zod in the end is I don't know. I'm not opposed to the idea of Superman being in the position where he has to kill someone, but it's the way he reacts to it, it's oh my god, I killed someone. And I'm wait, was that set up earlier throughout the film? I might have to kill someone, but I don't want to, that I missed? Because I don't think it was. And then the very next scene, he meets with the military colonel and drops the drone and is in front of him, and he just, I don't know, he seems perfectly fine after killing someone.
Yeah, and one of the best Superman, I would argue probably the best Superman movie and one of the best superhero movies, period. Superman versus the Elite. That does a better job at some of the things in this, with just the style of the action, with, okay, we didn't talk about, in this action scenes, they, better than any Superman movie I've ever seen, get across how strong Superman is.
Oh, yeah.
They really do show that dude is insanely powerful and it's terrifying. But anyway, Superman and the Elite, that's a movie that has, oh god, Superman's power is terrifying, and oh god, Superman kills someone. But in that, it's framed as, oh shit, if Superman were to kill people, that would be fucking terrifying. Because Superman, he's a malevolent god. He's this pure good person who just wants to do what's right. If Superman started killing people, it would be fucking terrifying. And that's how Superman killing should be framed. Not, Superman killed because, like, he had to, except, I mean, couldn't he just cover Zod's eyes?
Yeah.
Or fly up? Also, getting back to Zod being evil for evil's sake, after his ship is blown up and he can't make a new Krypton anymore, he's just motivated by revenge. He just wants to kill everyone because he wants to make Superman sad. Ooh, such a deep villain.
Yeah.
I want to murder some kids because it will make this guy I don't like sad. I'm a sympathetic character. Ugh.
Yeah, but that military lady thinks he's kind of hot, so it's okay at the end of the day.
Yeah, this film is very humorless. It tries jokes like twice. Like there's a military captain's like, Superman's kind of hot. To the general, like, what? Okay, that needed to be in this movie. And also when Superman and Lois finally kiss, they're like, you know, it goes downhill after the first kiss, I've heard. Which, who the fuck says that? No one says that. And then Superman says, don't worry, it's okay, I'm an alien. What? What? That doesn't make... Okay, sure, whatever. Oh god, this movie...
Yeah, also, in the final action scene where they're destroying Metropolis, as that action scene goes on, the CGI gets more and more noticeable. Not terrible, just, okay, you kind of running out of budget here, aren't you? So the film ends with Superman, Clark Kent, getting a job at the Daily Planet to keep an eye on the world.
It's kind of weird, because in this, he meets Lois before he's even Superman. He falls in love with her before he becomes Superman, okay?
Yeah.
Before he's a Daily Planet reporter. So it's not like, oh, he fell in love with a coworker. It's, he was already in love with her, and then he got a fake identity and a job at her place of business so he can spend time with her 24/7. That's kind of fucking creepy, Soups.
Exactly. Like, that's what I was gonna bring up. It's like, she knows this man is basically a god, and she's seen him kill people, and he seems pretty well adjusted to that, and to the fact that he just leveled the entire city. But, I don't know, he's cute, so... And he cauterized the wound that he inadvertently caused. But, you know, the comics say we have to be together, so we have to be together. The end.
The end.
Yep. Alright. So, this movie is terribly written. The structure, the nonlinear structure, does a complete disservice to the film. The exposition is horrendously obvious. The action is boring because there's nothing at stake. The only thing that's at stake is, ooh, Zod's trying to destroy the world. Yeah, but the world is filled with nothing but shitty people who've done nothing but bully Superman.
Also, I mean, millions of them are already dead anyway, so...
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying that 1 million people dying and 8 billion dying is the same thing, but like Superman's fighting to save people, it feels weird when he isn't saving people because, oh shit, they're already all dead. Like, that family that Zod tries to laser, they're probably the only people still alive in Metropolis at that point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And starting your first movie in the DCEU with a giant climactic apocalyptic action scene, it established a precedent where, like, the next several final action scenes in your movies in your cinematic universe have to meet that standard or go above it, or else just be kind of rendered as, oh, they don't have as much stakes. It's starting the universe with something like this from a character, story, action, everything fucks up the entire cinematic universe. Zack Snyder, he says a lot of dumb shit, then he does not understand the characters. He has to fight for really poor decisions to be made into his movie. This movie is pure style over substance. The script is shit. The action is boring. The visual style, it's good, but has no substance to it whatsoever. It is from a tonal, character, thematic, and story perspective, it is inaccurate, and I do not offend it because this does not work here.
And at the end of the day, even setting the pacing and the writing and just the dullness aside, I don't like this film because I like Superman. Superman, I think, when done right, is one of the best characters in fiction, period. And this film does not get Superman.
Not at all.
It just doesn't.
And it baffles me how hardcore DC fans will, like I mentioned earlier, fight tooth and nail in defense of this movie. It's just baffling to me.
You know, Riley, I'm genuinely curious about how you're gonna rate this.
You know, I had a score when I watched it, but having talked about it and fleshed it out a lot more, I do like the movie less. As I said, I was going to be a mix of subjective and objective with this movie.
I mean, to be fair, nothing we do is not subjective.
Oh, right, of course, yeah, absolutely. But I'm trying to be as fair as possible. I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 10. It is the epitome of average, mediocre.
Out of curiosity, what did you initially think you would rate it?
6.
You know, I don't like this movie. It's dull. I don't care about the characters. Yeah, the special effects are cool, but it's destruction porn with no weight behind it. And I like Superman too much to give this movie anything more than a 6.5. And that's only because of the special effects team. This movie, it's like that group project where you work really hard and then your buddy Zach comes in and he just messes everything up, you know?
Yep. I'm so looking forward to the Snyder Cut next month.
Oh, I'm not watching the Snyder Cut on my own. No! I am not watching 4.5 hours of Zack Snyder unless I'm doing a review on it. And it's gonna probably be a few months before we get to Batman v Superman or either cut of Justice League, because you need a break after watching a Zack Snyder movie before going on to another one. Maybe we'll watch Watchmen sometime. Watchmen's probably his best because it is word for word, and every time it goes off script, it gets worse. I've heard mixed things about Sucker Punch and 300.
I've heard Sucker Punch sucked. 300 it's okay.
Oh, and by the way, this is not to say that Joss Whedon's great. I mean, he's a better director, but also he's a giant fucking tool. We'll get to it when we go to the Justice League review eventually. You know, next week's episode is actually kind of fitting, because it also ties into a movie that Warner Brothers is releasing in March.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next week, in honor of the HBO Max release of Godzilla vs. Kong, we will be reviewing the 1962 film King Kong vs. Godzilla.
And you know what? After watching this, we need that. We need some camp to lighten our spirits.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm really interested in it. I've never seen a Godzilla film before, and I'm very interested.
I've seen one.
Yeah.
This one. Riley, where can they find you?
You can all find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe, where you can check out all of my latest short films, one of which just featured in a film festival, so I'm pretty proud about that. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok at Riley James Thorpe, all one word, where I post a lot of fun and funny content on there.
You can all find me on Twitter at Jarmes Casey, JarmesCasey, and you can find my work, including like 24 short stories. There's some good gems in there. Check them out. Or like the indie games I've made at caseyjarms.wordpress.com. We'll be back next week, assuming Superman doesn't snap our necks. As always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And you know what? Hey, we got a little annoyed in this review, but still, at the end of the day, it's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it, especially not to a ladder.